I have done a lot of panel discussions over the last 11, 12 years in fintech, but this is a topic which is very close to heart. And I am very glad that there are people who have done meaningful change on the ground in this space. So thanks for having all of you. Let me just set the context. So I interact a lot with global banking and fintech folks. I built a company which was US headquartered, have spoken at events like Money 2020 and Japan Fintech Week. And when we talk about some of the systems that are there in India, their jaws drop and they just can't believe what we have achieved. Right? For example, I'm sure a lot of you already know that UPI has already clocked $1 trillion in value of transactions. It's more than 66 billion transactions till the end of November itself. And there's a lot of work happening across the board, whether it is Zerodha, what they have built on the trading side, and they have about 15 to 20% of the volume of the markets, or whether it is Bharat Bill payment system. One after another, India has come up with revolutionary platforms in payments, in lending. Digital lending has actually grown by 15x in last 7 or 8 years. So there's a phenomenal rate of change which is happening in digital across the board. And the reason why I'm talking about digital and this topic is because I had the fortune of having a discussion with Nandan Nilekani, and he told me something that has always stuck in my mind. He said that the only way to reach to the masses in India is by lowering the cost of delivery, and lowering the cost of delivery can only happen once you use technology. Otherwise, we will not be able to reach to the masses. And I think that's kind of the thesis or the theme behind this discussion. So before we start, maybe a quick round of introduction. Mr. Swaminathan, maybe you can start from there.
Thank you. Thank you for Kerala Startup Mission for this wonderful program. And thanks for this other panelists also. And I am Swaminathan. I represent ESAF Small Finance Bank. I head strategy and planning enterprise-wide to decide what we do, how we do, and things like that. And also, I am head of third-party products, which already do a lot of things on the insurance space. I was instrumental in setting up the FinTech Conclave for ESAF Small Finance Bank, wherein we encountered somewhere in 2020 through virtual meetings a lot of FinTechs. And from then on, we are in the journey now, and a lot of incubation is happening inside ESAF Bank. And so we'd be very looking forward for meeting every one of you in everywhere. Thank you.
Thanks. Manoj?
Hi, good afternoon. Good to see the hall half full after 2 hectic days. So I'm Manoj Agarwal from SEAFUND. We are an early stage VC. We invest in tech-first businesses, and fintech is one of our focus areas. 20% of our portfolio, 20-25% is in fintech. So yeah, we work closely. I work closely with Amit also to look at opportunities in fintech. He's an angel investor. So happy to be here. Look forward to the discussion.
Good evening, Kovalam. Myself, Vishwanath Div. I take care of marketing in India Post Payment Bank. And I really appreciate, sir, the way you saw the hall half full, the way we used to see the glasses half full, always being optimist. And fintech is all about, creating optimism in the market. We are closely, being a participant and also a promoter of an idea called Finclovation, an in-house initiative of the IPB, where we promote and we invite, collaborations with these startups for finding some of the answers of the challenges to create a financial inclusion in a true sense in the country like India. So that's where we are, and look forward to have a engaging session today with the moderator here. Thank you.
Thank you. Somebody told me that the glass is half full and the rest is filled by air and hope, and it's full optimism look at things. So Mr. Swaminathan, I'll start with you. At a lot of conferences and panels, we talk about that there are 4,000 fintech startups, 1 out of every $5 goes into fintech companies, and all that stuff is there. Very rarely we talk about what is the impact on the society and economy, right? Can it play a role in improving the GDP of the country? We have a $5 trillion GDP goal. Can fintech actually help reach there?
Yeah, actually, this fintechs are supposed to do a lot of things on the revolution side when it comes back to impacting the community on other economic factors also. In fact, if you see, it's PM who quoted it, telling that fintechs will cause a financial revolution. That's what he said. So if you want such a financial revolution to happen in India, unless and until you touch every single community, the society at large, in whatever methods that is possible. Today, you talk about Aadhaar, Jandan, Aadhaar, mobile. These are all possible because of fintechs, and the technology has helped, and everyone is benefited now. Everything happens for a reason. See, unlike developed countries, even we have vaccine certificates in electronic modes in India, whereas we don't find that in even developed countries. So essentially speaking, the society has to be benefited, and fintechs in turn will be benefited, and fintechs are causing such impact in the society. I'm just took few examples of whatever we have seen on the identity of a person, or on the KYC part, or on the vaccine part. There are enough and more that has to come. You take health techs, insure techs, and reg techs. So there are so many companies that are going to come, and the company, ultimately the society gets benefited. If the society gets benefited, automatically it helps the nation. You call you the fifth largest, you boast about India, that has happened probably because of these fintechs. Brick by brick has built this society. That's what I feel. Thank you.
Coming from a lifelong banker, it definitely feels encouraging, for the fintech ecosystem. Manoj, you have invested in fintech companies. Can you give us some examples of companies that are actually making a change towards the society and economy?
Interesting question. So whatever we invest in, we feel that there is an impact the company makes on the society. But I'll give you a specific example. One of our portfolio, FinSol, which we have invested in some time back, is making a true impact on the society. They are into insurance premium financing. Now, we all know that insurance, we are very underinsured as a country. And one of the reasons is that a lot of our people down the line are unable to pay their insurances upfront. And, especially in general insurance, insurance companies prefer you to pay upfront, like your health insurance, car insurance, vehicle insurance, or whatever you call it. And this company, what it does is, for example, it started working with Uber drivers. And Uber drivers always had a challenge, especially imagine in a pandemic situation where they had to pay 20,000 insurance premium. So this company actually enabled them to pay and take back that money in installments over the next, say, 9 months or 12 months or 6 months, as the case may be. Similarly in health, in fact, the health portfolio of theirs is growing very fast. So they work with insurance companies and enable people across the landscape, especially people in the early stage of their life, people who cannot afford to pay that 20, 30, 40K. And sometimes because of that, they take a lower insurance. For example, an average insurance should be 5 lakh, but they end up taking 2 lakh or 1 lakh. So this is helping them to take the suitable insurance and make it easy for them to pay. So which, according to us, is a huge impact on the society. And according to me, there are so many of them, like SME lending, micro lending through the fintech platforms has made a huge impact to the economy also, because, when people get money, they are able to do more business. So the money is at the core of any GDP growth. So, for example, today morning I was walking, I was on my walk, and, I felt like having this local tea. I didn't have any money in my pocket, but because of the fintech enablement, I was able to have that 10 rupee tea and pay through an UPI app. So that's the kind of impact, and it has helped the economy grow, right? Otherwise, I would have not had that tea and gone back to my hotel, right? So that's, I think, what is happening.
Yeah. interesting use case around premium financing, where also commercial insurance is costlier for cars, right? So it makes sense. The drivers can't pay for it. Thanks. So can you give some examples? I mean, when India Post Bank was launched, it was an incredible model, right? Many people said that this can have the reach. So have you seen some examples of how it is reaching places where earlier we could not reach?
Yeah, definitely. For last 4 completed operational years, what we have seen is there have been not only geographies or demographies, it also about instances where people need the banking support. For example, people, in a condition where they can't travel to anywhere, like being hospitalized, and they need a banking support because they want to withdraw money through AEPS or something like that. We have been able to reach out to such kind of use cases, and we have seen tremendous trust, which was anyways there in the name of India Post, getting amplified by the services of banking being reaching to the doorstep. And today, if I say, more than 2.5 lakh people feet on the street who are delivering these services day in, day out, there have been tremendous potential we have seen, and people have now realized that how one formal banking channel can actually make so much changes in their life. So people who have not been experienced banking at all are also now into the domain of banking today. So yes, digital banking, the way we have tried to make it a physical approach, assisted banking was the key word. It has really made a difference in the entire journey of the banking business.
Do you see the usage of that Aadhaar-enabled payment system?
Absolutely, sir.
I feel that it's a undervalued story. Like, we should talk a lot more about how APS does this domestic money remittance.
Yes. So the challenge, sir, what happens with us being a government body, we do a lot of things, but probably don't, send out feelers in the market. But then, if I see that way, APS being an old product, almost 3.5 year product, but the way we have transformed it, we have started calling it Aadhaar ATM as a branding, because people understood that in an easier way. So people can go withdraw money from wherever. And we just keep it to them, like, you want to have just a relationship of withdrawing money and going away, absolutely no issues. We can still be delivering to your doorstep. So it's like, banking for all has got a, kind of a fulfilling meaning in it itself.
Interesting names actually we have in India, right? For example, nowhere else in the world, I think we call the NFC cards as Wi-Fi cards. In India, I think it's more popular, people call them Wi-Fi cards.
Correct.
So my next question is that we talk a lot about fintech companies in conferences, but I am a firm believer that fintech is not just about startups innovating. In fact, there's a lot of innovation coming from the banks, right? It's just that a lot of these stories are not told very well. But then also NPCI is a bank-led organization, obviously regulator and government supported, but they have created like some of the most wonderful fintech innovations in the country. So I wanted to understand, especially from the two of you, sir, you have worked at many banks. Now banks have the trust, the brand trust, the reach, the access. So they are placed, in my mind, they are probably placed much better in terms of providing financial inclusion and reaching out to where, sometimes digital can also not reach. Can you give us some examples and some stories from what has been achieved so far?
Yeah, that's really a good question, I would say. So unless you include everybody, every single constituent in a society, you cannot be said as successful. And financial inclusion, basically, you have to include all that who has unbanked, underserved, and those people. And I would say that bank at large are little bigger machinery with a lot of moving parts and things like that. So fintechs are much more agile in terms of going to the customer. Today's mom and pop stores are all becoming agency banking modules. So you get whatever banking services that you need. Like you said, Aadhaar-enabled payment service. AEPS, by touching your fingerprint, putting your fingerprint on a MAFO device, you are able to touch the bank server, look at what is the balance available in that space, and the money that you require has enough balances in your credit. So the shopkeeper gives you money, and the money gets credited to his account electronically. So this particular type of payment services are possible, and what has happened is the rural economy also has beefed up. It really helps the rural economy. Otherwise, the mom and pop stores probably is making about 100, 200 rupees per day, probably will be making another 500 rupees by way of the commission that he earns out of this. And the bank is also at an advantage. What happens is that the ATMs, machineries, the rules, reconciliations being regulated entities under the very nose of RBI, so much of complaints and things like that, it becomes much difficult for the banks to handle such multifarious scenarios and smaller payments happening at various places. Today, why is it UPI so successful? Because it financially included everybody into that. If you have a small fruit cart or a tailor of whatever you have, you still can take money electronically from a high net worth individual who always transact electronically. He doesn't keep money in his purse, but still be able to pay for that banana or apple that he picks it up from the fruit cart. So this has become the reality. So what is happening is the real social upliftment happens in every single smaller economy. I have seen that physically, I'm telling you. In fact, I can give you one example. If, for example, the same thing get extended, I think some of the fintechs can even take this idea. So you will have a lot of merchants on the app, and if they are all APS enabled, and the discovery of location is also known, you will know not only to take money from a mango seller, you will be able to buy some mangoes also. So the point here is, whenever you want to take cash from an ATM, you don't have to go to the ATM. You can go to a mango seller or a banana seller or a mom and pop stores in your near locality who is the agent of the bank. So the bank cannot execute everything. So that's where people have to think, fintechs especially, if you really want to help the society and economically you be viable, sustainable, and you want to help everybody in the system, I think you should take care of all such activities, look at various operational friction, where is the problem statement that comes that can help a bank to do it efficiently. See, what is a revolution, which we all talk about? Revolution is challenging the status quo and disrupting the whole thing, the normal model, create new business models, create new product, process, and which will benefit the entire spectrum of society. And that can be achieved. And I think you took the right question, Amit. Thank you.
Mr. Vishwanath, anything to add?
Yeah, so in our case, this entire banking in a digital format. So what we have seen people adopting to it, with slight hitch in the beginning, since we don't give them any physical, collateral or a passbook or stuff like that, and it's all SMS based, or maybe what you can do is you can ask for a statement which will come to you next day after a printout been done at the branch. But then slowly what we have seen, the people have adopted it very, very well. They understand after the first transaction itself that, this is not going to be anywhere. It's my money, it's very secure. So the secured transaction was the kind of, one of the concern of the customer that we have faced, and we have been able to overcome that very, very well in the time that we have spent with them. Then we had the challenge of, sometime the cash flows, because still the withdrawals are happening in cash. So we still want to make a kind of an ecosystem approach where we want to have the merchant also accepting your digital transaction, and then, goods and services flow without cash being much in the circulation. But I think there is a time yet to arrive where we will have that kind of situation. Still, cash is predominantly withdrawn for various buying things of these customers. So the postman has to carry it. So there was a kind of a little bit of understanding initially how much to carry, where to carry, who will carry, what day. Maybe a one small market, bigger market, based on population, based on their socio-economic profiling. So there are a lot of calibrations which gone into the entire planning of it. Then technology itself is evolving, so we have to keep up the pace. Then we have also been doing a lot of refreshers to the field, because we have a huge fleet of people who are doing everyday job. These people were not really made for doing a business of banking. We have transformed them in a subtle way, but had gone through a lot of processes being deployed in terms of how to make them understand banking, how will a normal general postman being a delivery guy of a postal product or a parcel will become a payment bank delivery person. So we have seen these things worked in tandem and had a very, very positive impact today. So we had crossed around 6 crore customers as a base for the bank, and most of them are active. Half of them are women, 80% plus are rural, and very happening ecosystem being developed there. So today we feel that the adoption has really taken well.
Yeah. I mean, the scale of it, I can just imagine. So, Manoj, before asking you the question, just for the audience, right, post-run sessions are usually sleepy, so I'll just give some examples. So my acid test in fintech or in tech is my mom, right? So if she starts using something, I believe that has kind of achieved critical mass or gone mainstream. So after a lot of trials, she has started using WhatsApp and UPI. But very recently, she asked me, can I do my Jeevan Praman while sitting at home and I don't have to go to the bank? So Jeevan Praman is basically for your pension, you have to prove that you are still alive, right? So far you had to actually go to the branch mostly to do it, and they started using Aadhaar there. And then they started sometimes sending an agent, some of the banks have started doing that. But this time around, they enabled, it was a complex process, but they enabled using, video KYC using Aadhaar. Now, it was not that simple, but given a techie, I could figure it out. There were like 4 or 5 steps. And she was so happy. She said, now we are never going to the branch again to do this Jeevan Praman. That is the impact that technology is having in this country, like unimaginable, right? Another one, today morning I was sitting with an entrepreneur, probably, he's somewhere in the audience. He was telling me that for doing cattle insurance, one very important thing which is required is that a doctor has to visit and give a certificate that this is the certificate for the cattle, and then only insurance can happen for the cattle. Now the problem is, one, to find an appointment with the doctor to come and then give him 5,000 or 500 rupees, whatever is the charges. These things have been preventing a lot of cattle insurance penetration. So what they are doing is they are digitizing that process so it can happen through the click of a picture and basically some process that they run, a deep tech process in the background. Now if that could happen, they could do the certification as well as the cattle insurance in one go, which will help a lot. Because these poor farmers, when they lose a cattle, it's like life-threatening for them, right? So some very good examples, right, on what kind of impact it is creating. So maybe let's discuss some specific areas, right? There are many sections of the society where we need upliftment, right? So I have noted down a few actually. Women micro-entrepreneurs, right? A very big segment, I think you touched upon it. There is blue-collar workers. I think you gave the example as well. There is very, very small businesses, right? MSMEs which have a few lakhs or less than 50 lakhs kind of, revenue. There's farmers, there are mates, and so on. Can you guys, in whichever order, give some examples of what kind of fintech or banking applications have actually targeted these different segments?
Can I take this question, Amit?
Yeah, sure. Good.
So, MSME is one thing where we find a lot of operational friction. Starting from that Udyam registration, filing of documents, availability of chartered accountants for the project reports, financial modeling, and giving stock reports, stock audits, verification of the hypothecated stock. And there are so many things that are still really under operational friction area. And digitals already has a lot of solutions, okay? I think in the previous panel, they were talking about availability of wheelchairs within an hospital. There are so many other methods that you can connect, you can find out lat-lang, discovery, all these things are very common now. GPS, things are all pretty easy now. So with these things, we should really always find out the ways and means of solving this issue. So MSME, operational friction, problem area, fintechs can really do a lot of space of that. Similarly, if you take agri, we always face farmers who can really not operate, they can operate a YouTube or a WhatsApp thing, and but at the same time in a vernacular style, but at the same time will not be able to understand all your burger lines, this menu cards and things like that. Okay, right aligned arrow, left aligned arrow. They have challenges in the UI UX part. So speech to text and bots are creating a lot of things for the Agri. So Agri is one space like where definitely it can really, this fintechs can really play a lot, and that can really lead to a much bigger revolutions than what we have at this moment. Okay, and you talked about the gender finance or sort of including women entrepreneurs, micro entrepreneurs, and things like that. See, one thing what we have seen as a banker, I'm telling you this, a lot of times this guy doesn't have even time to shut his shop. He sits down under the same thing where he was sitting and collecting cash and eating his food. He is not even going to his house to have his food. Where do you expect him to go to the bank and apply for a loan, sit before the banker, explain the requirement for money and things like that? I think this account aggregator which is coming, this open credit enabled network, these are the areas that are going to go much bigger in building micro entrepreneurs. All these micro entrepreneurs are a fit case now to become an MSME also. I think this time, I use this forum to really say this because I've seen this much in Kerala, and typically in Tamil Nadu and other places, Maharashtra, etc., a lot of things are happening on this space. I think Kerala should also evolve into this particular thing where you find these people evolve as micro entrepreneurs and they have a record of whatever transactions that they do digitally. You give them a simple P&L account of what they sold, what is their expense, and is it a loan, a debtor, creditor type of trading P&L account, a bookkeeping like okay, Khata book, all these type of things which are there in the market can be used to really bring this entrepreneurs as MSME, and the operational friction area of MSME you address, automatically you are creating micro entrepreneurs, you are solving Agri problems, you are solving MSME problems, and there's a whole lot of things that the bank will come to you and say that, boss, you please do this and we will work with you. We want to, you solve this problem, we will work with you. So that's what fintechs have to do.
I would just like to add one thing on these women micro entrepreneurs. I met the founder of Kaleidofin. So she said that I'll basically bust two myths that are there in the industry. One, that women entrepreneurs in this segment targeting financial inclusion cannot raise money. I think they have raised about $13 to $15 million so far. She said, point number one. Second myth she busted was that she said this is the best borrowers in the country. Like when you actually loan to these women micro entrepreneurs, they're very hardworking, very sincere, and they always return the money. He said we are very happy lending to them. And they have phenomenally low NPA. So I was very impressed by the story actually.
Let me add only one thing. And these people, the society which I talked about, or the sector, the segmentation I talked about, Agri, MSME, this micro entrepreneurs, much more loyal, and whatever they take as loan, they remit back. And unlike all the big people, corporates who takes money and then fly abroad, these people really pay back the money. And I think fintech should help them first.
Manoj, any of these segments that you...
I think Mr. Swaminathan has covered everything. But let me just mention one area. I think micro lending at the very lowest level has made a huge impact. For example, people who borrow 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, I mean, that still happens at a large level where they borrow from local Sahukar or whatever you call them, at probably 1% a day or some 10% a month, and that kind of. Though a lot of people crib about fintechs lending at 2.5% a month or 30%, 40%, but still they have brought down that rate of lending drastically from 10% a month to maybe 2-3% a month, because it's a high risk lending, and as things evolve, as the markets grow, I'm sure that cost will come down. But imagine the impact it has made from like I remember last year our maid, was borrowing from somebody at 10% a month. Okay, a maid comes to a household like ours and we help her. But then through this micro lending, she can borrow at 2 to 3% a month, which is much, much lower than 10% of rate. So a large number of fintechs are trying to solve this in different ways, in different segments, which according to me, and the lending is happening very fast. It's not that they have to do a lot of paperwork, so which is all enabled through the various Aadhaar-based systems and so many other automations which this whole technology element has brought in the whole BFSI space enabled by fintechs. So that, according to me, has made a huge impact, and it is still very early. It can grow really huge and probably will be one of the factors which will enable us to grow the GDP faster, because a large portion of the GDP comes in India from that layer.
I'm very glad that you mentioned that point, because when this whole unsecured lending fintech company started, people were like, oh, this will never grow. Then they grew very fast, like Credit Bee, Smartcoin, Early Salary. These companies have really decent size loan books. And then people said, no, but the interest rates are very high that they are charging. But I think the point Manoj is making is still much lower than what loan sharks are charging, right? So, Vishwanath, any other point you want to add?
So, most of the segment that you talk about, except the maid, because that's a little bit of an urban phenomenon, and we are there, but not to that extent spread in the urban markets, since our focus is more on the rural side and tier 2 markets. So farmers, women, DBT wage earner, Manrega worker, or as such the pensioners, the old age people, these are like small shop kirana owners. These are people who have been provided with the kind of banking support with all the technology, because ours is probably the only bank which is fully paperless. We don't seek for, we don't ask, or we don't provide also many times any physical statements. So everything is digital. We have given a QR card because many people were not able to remember their account number or their customer IDs or stuff like that. So it's a physical QR card which we give to every customer when we onboard them as a customer. That's the first and the last physical connect between us. And then we have an app which is made in 13 languages, which is just to ensure that people are able to do the banking in their own languages. So major languages of the country have been covered for all these states as per the schedule which has been mentioning that. Then we talk about the products like, we have been offering now the insurances and the claims basis, the photographs and submission and quick, payment of the claims, which is again making them, realize the potential of fintech as a product, as a, service both. Then we have, now mutual fund investments. We are offering small 100 rupees SIPs to people who are from tier 2, tier 3 market, just to make them mainstream, realize the fact that there are wealth creation mechanisms which they might not have been aware of, or have not be, using that to the fullest potential. And then, yes, for us, the entire system of, giving them the services on the doorstep, that itself is technology enabled, which is, we have a post-info app where people can go and, submit their requests, which is routed through the process to the last mile postman and the Gramin Dak Sevak, who is then delivering it to the doorstep. So it works, as a kind of a, lead capturing and delivering services. So these are the, things which we have made to make sure that people who have not been banking should be banking and should understand that there is a benefit of getting into formal banking system.
Amazing. I actually learned a lot today. Thanks everyone. I think we don't have time for audience questions, or we have?
We can take one question from the audience.
Okay, let's have it. One question.
Hi, I'm Srijit. I'm co-founder of a startup called Tinkybit. So my question is, recently the Indian government is publishing many regulations on the fintech. So how will it affect in the future for the startups, for the NBFCs and things like that?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. Recently, RBI is publishing many regulations for
Like digital
PNBL.
lending
Yeah,
guidelines,
digital lending.
right? And
So how it will affect the NBFCs and the working of fintech in future? That's my question.
Yeah. Actually, see, you understand about colonization, right? So I think India was colonized by about 200 years before, right? So the digital colonization we should not permit, right? And that's what regulator is playing. Regulator is playing rightly the steps that are preventing unwanted entities and so many people outside that colonizing in India, and they really call the shots. So he wants you to be insulated out of all this, and so don't take it as a sort of restriction. The seaside audit or the type of things that they put a lot of data security and things like that, it is to protect you guys and to the society. And so we should take it in a very positive way. So I will give you a Lamborghini car in which you can run it at say 200 kilometer speed. But I say that it doesn't have a brake. Will you drive?
No.
So similarly, these things are all, you have to take it as a system and a brake where you have to run the machine at a very high speed. And that's it. Thank you.
What will be the future of BNPL?
Future of?
buy now, pay later.
Buy now, pay later,
BNP.
yeah.
Acha. Okay, so to put it very simply for every one of us here, so earlier everything was under one single card, right? So now everybody can have, every merchant can give a small amount of credit and then take that particular margin on him. Either also, earlier also he was putting his margin onto that and paying the merchant discount rate. So now that BNPL has come, instead of one card, it is split into multiple this thing. It will be there. And even if this thing, BNPL is not new. Earlier, the Annachi store, which was next to your shop, was giving on a small slip and you pay at month end, no? That same BNPL and nothing to this. You do it digitally and you become a fintech. Yeah.